speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The room was full, so they didn't feel that we should wait until 10:45. So let's get started early, and that means we have more time for Q&A or more time for our slides if we just are not able to cover everything that we hope we would cover, right? I think this timing for this slot is pretty interesting in the sense that we are a session right after the keynote where the grand vision was shared in terms of what's to come. But we are happy to share what we have already accomplished with what we know already exists in the product, right? I am Sampath Chaparala, and joined by me, Abraham Thomas. We both have some shared responsibilities for how we've actually taken the journey to mature Tableau and the overall visual analytics capability at Pfizer. This is a legal disclaimer from our corporate. If we were allowed to speak in public, obviously we got to be good corporate citizens. You can read this. Basically, it means that the opinions expressed here are
Just
of the speakers and not necessarily represent that of Pfizer Inc. With that, the objective was to really share our journey rolling out interactive analytics to 8,000 plus. When Abe and I were brainstorming 3-4 months ago, writing the abstract for this, we thought 8,000 plus was a good number. Today we are actually 10,000 plus. So that gives you some sense of how the journey has been evolving. So we are already past 8,000 plus. Let's move on. About Pfizer, right? For those of you who already know about Pfizer, well and good. If you don't know about Pfizer, we are a leading world's premier biopharmaceutical company. As per our last yearbook, 2015 statistics, $49 billion in revenue, 64 manufacturing sites worldwide, close to 100,000 colleagues, and 175 plus markets in which we do business, and over 7 products with sales over $1 billion. And the reason why we wanted to share this picture was most of you who may or may not know that Pfizer also has a consumer health division, and then there are a number of products that you may already be using or buying, which you may or may not necessarily realize that they're also actually Pfizer products, right? For more information on the products, here's the link. I encourage you to visit to actually understand the science that goes on at Pfizer and all the therapeutic areas that we work in. Before we get into the journey slides, I wanted to actually take a step back and remind us all on how, if we were to backtrack 3 years from now, going back to 2013, where were we and how did things look like, right? We were a typical large enterprise BI environment where we have a very robust implementation of an enterprise BI tool. I won't name the actual tools, but we have pretty robust implementation of enterprise BI tools. We still do. And we also had a large collection of niche analytics tools. Very low Tableau usage, to be honest, only 10 plus users. And most of the report delivery or report development was centralized, very limited self-service, and predominantly desktop-based deployment, right? That was the characteristic. We are no different. If you are working for any large enterprise, you can actually relate to that pretty well, right? And if you were to also characterize what does it take to actually do real analytics, it was a highly skilled activity, right? I thought I'd find a nice graphic that's a good representation. If you look at the graphic, it basically is talking about the techniques that are used to do high jump, right? It's a highly skilled art. Not every one of us can be a world-class high jumper, let alone a basic high jumper, right? Analytics itself was associated with extremely high-skilled talent, right? And that was what we were dealing with. And you can relate to most of these. And if you also look at the analytics maturity model, that represents the continuum. You must have read this in a number of white papers. It's pretty widely published. There is a characterization around activities to answer what happened, why did it happen, prediction, and then operationalizing, right? And then I've shared some of the users to actually give you some sense of the scale about the relative scale of the number of users that are being served with these capabilities, right? If that is what 2013 represents, and that's where we were, I'd like to show you where we are now. Right? In 2016, I think almost towards the end of 2016, we are over 10,000 plus already. We have a global deployment, which we call, we are very proud to call it a Global Visualization Cloud Platform. Over 8,600 in the Americas, about 2,700 in the Asia Pac, and then close to about 500 in the European region. And this journey is still continuing, and the numbers are going to change, right? What we shared when we wrote the abstract, 8,000 plus, was based on what the snapshot was at that particular point in time, and then now obviously it has grown by 25%. And some of the business benefits that we have realized were we believe that we are, through this capability, we are able to successfully gain insight and explore our data through interactive visualizations, increase the speed of delivering analytics. There is no speed limit is infinity. I mean, these are funny graphics that we thought are a good representation. We also feel that we have built some environments that are safe zones to help our colleagues and consultants interact with the data in a safe and a controlled manner. And the art of analytics, instead of it being highly skilled endeavor, it is more fun now, right? And last but not the least, I think we have dramatically increased the number of colleagues who are actually making fact-based decisions, i.e. doing analytics rather than going back to the previous picture of circa 2013, right? So that is the contrast between where we were and where we are today. And the series of slides that will follow actually is an attempt to share how did we get there and what are the things that we thought we got right that we'd like to share with you all. Towards the end of it, of course, we will take some time for questions, but let's move on to the next slide. We feel that a collection of these four topics that we will elaborate on during the subsequent slides are things that we can treat them as global adoption accelerators, because our journey has been global, and then we have categorized them into four areas: sponsorship and governance, foundational engineering, visual analytics services, and community building. And we'll focus on visual analytics services. Abe will cover that. Abe, off to you now. And then we will actually elaborate on each of them throughout this presentation, and then we'll share some thoughts about what we did or we think we did right in each of these areas.
Hey, thanks, Sampath. Good morning, folks. My name is Abe Thomas, as Sampath already mentioned. So visual analytics services, right? So I'm part of two services offerings within Pfizer. One is called the Analytics Lab, or Pfizer Analytics Lab, and one is called Envision. So over the next 15, 20 minutes or so, I want to introduce the two services and show you how they differ, how we use visual analytics, and where Tableau comes into the picture, and how these services and these offerings have helped contribute to the adoption of visual analytics within Pfizer. So let's step back a minute. You want to control? Over here. So taking a step back, let's look at our world of challenges, right? So Sampath mentioned 2013, 2014, but these challenges exist today within Pfizer, and I'm sure they're very familiar with all of you, at least in one form or the other. I'll be really surprised if these are exclusive to Pfizer, right? So we are a medical company, so we have cases where users are dealing with billions, hundreds of billions of medical records. And they want to analyze that in real time, preferably interactively via some sort of a dashboard. We have users who come to us with their data in documents. I'm talking about thousands of pages of PDFs, Word documents, Excel sheets that they want to somehow analyze. How about integrating data from multiple data sources? Something we face every day. We have folks who understand their data, they have some visuals, but it's hard for them to get the story out of it. They're for them to explain to the business what the story is, what is really happening. Some groups need advanced analytics. The standard structured reporting is, of course, not enough. Unstructured data. There are groups who have new data sets and they need to explore it. So hackathons, something that's becoming more and more popular. And of course, users who are manually creating dashboards in Excel and so on. And others who just need help in visualizing the data in the best possible way. So, Sampath, next slide, please. So within Global Business Intelligence, of which Sampath and I are both a part of, we kicked off 2 service offerings. One is called the Pfizer Analytics Lab, which we call PAL for short, and the other one is Envision. Now the Analytics Lab, by the name itself, its focus is really on the analytics. It's more of a data science-driven organization, data engineering, and the core of our focus is on advanced analytics. I'm promoting that within Pfizer. However, the end users, they might not necessarily get all the analytics that come out of the lab. So we use visualization to help convey that message, and I'll show you some examples of that. In Envision, it's all about visualization. Visualization best practices, world-class dashboards, not so much about the data science, but about things that's more structured, more operational, that need to reflect industry standards and so on. Next slide, please. So let's look at areas of focus. So if we go back to a world of challenges, what does a lab really focus on? We do a lot of stuff within structured and unstructured data, semi-structured data. Large volumes of data is something that we're very familiar with. I think our largest table was a 2 trillion record table that we threw a live dashboard on top of. Advanced analytics, these were folks who are, medical or commercial folks who know their data very well. They see something is happening, but they don't know what's happening. So they need to take it to the next level to figure out what is happening and why. I need to explore the data first. That's hackathons primarily. A lot of folks come to us and say, we have our data, you have the expertise in doing stuff, can we get together and try to make sense about all of this? Envision is a little bit different. In Envision, the business usually already knows their data quite well. It's operational, it's financial, it's commercial, it could be sales, but they need help in telling the story. They need help in putting forward world-class visualizations. Or they need to integrate multiple data sets from different tools that we have out there. A lot of standard processes, KPIs, industry best practices, and folks who are tired of creating those manual dashboards. So if you see here on the left, on lab, it's analytics focused, with visualization meant to convey the actual message. In Envision, it's all about the visualization and bringing standards and KPIs and industry best practices into the picture. Next slide. All right, so let's look at some of our tools and technologies to the analytics. In the lab, we use a broad range of tools from Python and Spark and R. So there's a bunch of tools out there. But if you look at the type of stuff we do, it's not your standard everyday type of analytics. Treatment pathways, co-occurrences, hypothesis generation, text mining, classification. It's things that where folks they need to dig into the next level of analysis. They need to understand what is going on. For example, why are patients switching? Are patients switching? Is there titration? Build a cohort. And of course, we use Tableau for the most part to visualize the output of those studies. Whereas in Envision, it's more of your standard tools and technology that we see. And if you look at the stuff that we do within Envision, it's more around industry standards, around what's commercial reporting, financial tracking, field force facing, monthly reports, KPIs. So the visuals we see here bring in world-class visualizations. I really mean that. Some of the dashboards they produce are extremely well thought out, a lot of interaction with the business, whereas Analytics Lab is a little bit different there. So let's look at some examples of Envision. So project tracking, market share, financial reporting, and product management. If you look at these dashboards, it is what you would typically see from a dashboard-oriented perspective, right? A lot of KPIs, a lot of tracking with the color combinations. Everything in there is reflective of what the business actually needs from an ongoing operational perspective. There's a lot of interaction that goes on and thought process into the actual design of the dashboards, into the flow of thought. If you click here, what happens next? Drill down, drill through, everything is well thought out and laid out. Next slide. If you look at the lab, it's very different, right? The questions we answer here and the visuals we use are very different than your standard dashboards. So for example, the top one over here, how do lab values change across a cohort over a treatment? So we can give them some really good spreadsheets and numbers and p-values, but that may fly over the head of a lot of folks. So what do? We visualize it within Tableau, same population, left and right, pre and post treatment therapies. You immediately sense that there is something going on. And why we use Tableau is because often the next question is, well, who are these guys? What's happening? So we take this data, this was Python basically, bring it back into our data sets, integrate it back with the source data. Now users can add filters. They can click and drill down into each one of these points, see who that patient is, what the lab value was, pre and post, and so on. The bottom here is patient switching. So basically it's path analysis, right? If you're familiar with the shopping cart example, how do patients get to the final checkout line? This is around therapies. How are patients switching between therapies? So the analysis was done on a different platform. We bring it back in, integrate it out, and we created this in Tableau because users want to be able to click on each one of these points and see exactly who those guys were. Who are these patients? Where are they coming from? And they can, in here, search any therapy they want to. Visualization of topic themes at the top over there. Again, that is very different. That is really basically an R plugin. So here the use case was users are calling in and inquiring about diverse products, right? Product A, product B, whatever side effects, benefits, cons. And there needed to be a way to analyze these various documents and look for patterns, topics, and themes. Do we see anything emerging from here? Right? Is it something to do with the region, something to do with the certain demographic of patients? So we took R, brought that in via the R plugin, and the beauty of this now is this is integrated back into the source data. So every one of those nodes is really a text. So you click on that node, the text pops up, and the cluster themes pop up. You have filters there saying, I want to look at these themes or this product. And that's all, again, brought back into Tableau for visualization. The bottom one over there, dynamic comparison of relative emphasis. This is, if you think about it, that's actually z-scores, if you think about it, right? And it's a comparison of focus someone is paying to a certain something. Rather than having a bar chart saying, this is the amount of dollars or sales, whatever it may be, this is how does this compare to everything else? Now, can I calculate the z-scores dynamically based on a series of filters? And the idea was, I want to look at the outliers and the x or y axis. Everything in the middle there is not of relevance to us. So it's a very different way for the business seeing their data. And again, if you click on that, it goes back into the source database so you can pull up the relevant information. Next slide. So this is just a summary, right? Very clear, distinct set of visuals, all using Tableau, more data science. We don't spend a whole lot of time in making these beautiful colors. It's really meant to convey the message. But over there, a lot of thought has gone into the actual dashboard design. And the key thing here is these are all critical business needs, right? These are not things that are off the top of our head, but these are business needs. The business needs may vary between analysis to ongoing operations of the company. Next slide. All right, so we mentioned there are two different service offerings, and they work on two different areas, but there are often times when we do come together, and I'm a part of both teams, so I see what's going on in both areas. And there are times when the business has a need where both services have to come together. So in this case, the business had a need for mining through totally unstructured data, PDF documents, Excel, and Word, and extracting program metadata out. And then they needed to put that into an Excel sheet, and they wanted to compare programs across documents. Well, the problem was Envision can do that, but they want to operationalize that. They want to then have a strong visual interface. Well, that's Envision. So this is an ongoing project right now where the analytics lab took care of the first use case, can this be done? And Envision comes in and actually does the modeling and the visualization. So both groups do come together, and the only way that is possible is they cannot work in isolation. You cannot have the analytics lab and Envision work in total isolation. There has to be a way to see what is coming through the pipeline and when it makes sense to blend the two together. Next slide. All right, so my last slide, success factors, right? So we've had these groups running now for a couple of years, and there's more work than we can handle, to be honest. So let's look at our success factors. Number one, across the board, is leadership buy-in. So what does that mean? There is an investment in time, in human resources, and an opportunity cost that you have to make these solutions fly, right? Leadership has to understand the importance of visual analytics within the company. They have to understand that there is a great demand and be able to evangelize that across the board as well. The second one is colleague-driven client engagement and overlapping technical leadership. So the leadership of both these groups is all colleague-driven. We drive the engagement with our Pfizer colleagues and the clients in the business. And there's overlapping technical leadership. So I play the solution role in both these groups. But beyond me, there are folks who lead the platform team who are also part of this. There are folks who lead the client engagement who are also part of this. So from a platform perspective and tools and technologies, from a solutioning perspective, and from a client engagement perspective, we have those three areas covered. And that provides that overarching umbrella of what's going on there. The third is access to technology best suited. A fork, a spoon, and a knife won't answer all your problems, right? There are times you make use of other tools, especially on the lab side. We look for what is best to answer the current business need. And you can't have your hands tied behind your back. You need to have some sort of flexibility to get that done. So access to the technology, Sampath, work together very closely with him, Vic and others in the room. That's very, very critical. Now moving to Analytics Lab. The Analytics Lab is colleague-driven. Pretty much all of the work from a data science perspective is done by colleagues. We made a significant investment in bringing up a group of data scientists and investing over there. So data scientists and engineers, primarily colleagues in the Analytics Lab. That leads to the next point, prioritizing requests based on business value. Every business has a request for us. Not all of them are of high business value. So as colleagues, if we have 20 hours available this week, we have to be able to prioritize from these 3 or 4 requests that come in, which one adds the biggest value, which one is going to move the dial. Again, that has to report back out to our leadership, who's asking us, hey, what are you guys doing, right? So the ability to prioritize and to communicate back to the business saying, we have to put your request on hold for now, and still maintain that relationship with them is very critical. Third is analytics expertise and intellectual curiosity. I mean, for the lab, you need to have that, of course. And this is also extremely important, the ability to convey complex output visually. Often, data scientists, statisticians, they're good with the final numbers, but then it is also their responsibility. They're the ones who have to go into Tableau and visually depict that answer. If you can't convey your messaging to the business, you've lost them. So all those visuals that we saw, they were actually all created by the data scientists in our group, not by other experts. Moving on to Envision. Envision, the leadership is, of course, colleague-driven, but the execution is done through a trusted partner, right? There's a lot of ebb and flow and demand within Envision. So we rely on a trusted partner for several reasons. One, they have the expertise from an industry perspective. They see what's going on across the board, whether it's a financial dashboard, a commercial, HR. They kind of know what's the best practices out there. Ability to scale staff up or down. Again, ebbs and flows. Our trusted partner has to be able to bring folks on and offboard them as needed as the demand dictates. Sometimes this is a specialized area where we need someone with special expertise. They are very good at doing that. Strong visualization and integration expertise. Again, if the dashboards don't work for the customer, Envision is a failure. They have to work visually, they have to be supportable, and they have to be exact, because now we're looking at KPIs, looking at matching things to how they'd had stuff done before. And the fourth point I already mentioned, industry best practices. So looking back, this is what we see as our success factors for setting up these 2 different groups. Different use cases. The common theme is importance of visual analytics and how visualization of the answers is important to the various business units who put in the request.
Right. So prior to Abe jumping into the visual analytics services, I mentioned we think of these as 4 accelerators, right? We put them in 4 different categories, and we talked about visual analytics services. What you heard were horizontal services. These are business unit agnostic, right, and problem agnostic. But there were only two of them that we had time to elaborate. There are other services as well within the company that are vertical focused, right, within the operations, technology, manufacturing, finance. There are vertical services as well. I just wanted to emphasize that because those are not the only two services at Pfizer. There are two of the services that we are elaborating here. And as you can imagine, there are horizontal services. You can have vertical services for specific problem solving, right? With that, I want to actually cover the other three areas as well. So successful delivery of visual analytics services actually is critical upon the other three foundational elements, right? Let's spend some time on understanding how we did it, right? Sponsorship and governance. We call this as a pragmatic platform governance. I've highlighted three areas in terms of what would you want to actually generally govern with any technology capability. The two on the right hand side, how do you manage problems and issues, service levels, escalation, all of that, and how do you go about having some kind of a steering committee and governance and investment plan and a roadmap. All of those are not unique to Tableau. Regardless of any technology that you have, you would have to do these, right? If you have a technology, then you need to figure out how do you actually manage issues and track SLAs. You would also need to have some mechanism to not just track the investments, but also make sure that the supply and demand related to the investments that are being channeled toward that actually are serving the purpose, which is the demand that this needs to serve, right? So those are common. So we'll not spend on some time on this, but I'll actually elaborate on the first one, which is the request governance. Early on in the process, I think we backtracked to 2013. So back around 2013, we felt that it is more practical for us to govern these areas rather than govern those areas, because we have to do those independently for any technology anyway. So let's focus on what is the unit of technical governance and business governance in Tableau. Get it right? And in our mind, a site in Tableau, for those of you who are already aware of Tableau and then some of the nomenclature, a site within a Tableau is what is a unit of governance for us. And that would drive certain key criteria and decision making around how do we get it right, how do we promote self-service on that, how do we arrive at the shared responsibility matrix for what do we expect the technology teams to do versus what do we want to delegate back to the end user community, right? So that is the unit of governance. And technical, I would say, knobs and buttons in terms of tweaking performance, quota, storage, and all of those, you have to deal with these things anyway. And we're better off dealing with that at the site level, because if site represents a unit of governance, site can be mapped to a vertical, finance, HR, commercial, or any particular vertical functional area, and you can apply all of these, and the process becomes repeatable, right? I wanted to share that our unit of governance is site, and we've been extremely successful in managing that way, and it actually helps us bring in the right focus for each of those. Let's move on to the next one. I want to emphasize the next accelerator, which is community building. The fact that we are all here at this conference, and the conference has been fully sold out, 12,000 plus, itself speaks to the Tableau community or the current customers or the prospects who are actually interested in using this technology, right? It'll have a similar flavor to that, and I'll elaborate on how we did it. There is a community at Pfizer. There is a Pfizer Tableau community, right? And we focus on running periodic lunch and learn sessions. We, back in the one of the journey slides, I mentioned making analytics fun, right? We run visualization competitions, which are basically fun competitions. You can develop any visualization and then submit it for the competition, and then it's a fun competition that these are run periodically, and then the winners are awarded bragging rights, just to make it fun, right? We have a Tableau Day at Pfizer as well, just like we are here at the Tableau annual conference. We have a Tableau Day at Pfizer. It's a joint effort between Pfizer, trusted partners, and Tableau themselves. And then there's a day. We also have mechanisms to foster discussion threads, proctored doctor sessions or prearranged doctor sessions. This is a new service from Tableau where we have the opportunity to actually pre-book some time with experts, and then you can come to them just like you go to the doctor to talk or discuss about a particular issue or a challenge. You can do that for a particular Tableau visualization or a workbook or a dashboard that you want to have some expert opinion on, right? We do that, and then obviously there is lots and lots of Tableau training as well. And there are areas where the community contributes to best practices, the useful resources for onboarding, what to do, what not to do, and then how to get support. Last but not the least, there are communities of practice also within the company. Well, the Tableau, there is a community, but within the community, because we are a global organization, there is a regional flavor to that as well in terms of a community of practice. There's a community of practice within Americas, there is one in EMEA, and there is one in Asia Pac as well. And last but not the least, the point I want to emphasize here is it is a community for the users, led by the users, right? These are all, think of these are volunteer positions. The community chairs, community of practice cadence, the kind of activities that they want to drive, the kind of sessions that they would want to arrange, are all driven through community feedback in terms of what is relevant for the community at large in that particular region, and then they self-govern them, right? And that's extremely important because I think there's a saying says it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community for any technology endeavor to be successful, and that actually will help adoption as well, right? So moving on to the next one. This is what our internal intranet site looks like. Obviously, this is accessible only within Pfizer. All the things that I mentioned are things that you can see, everything from useful documentation to tips and techniques and tricks to information about our deployment, architecture, how to get training, server testing, user groups, key contacts, all of that. All of these are real, and then the community self-governs all of them, right? We had a Tableau Day. That's a snippet from the Tableau Day earlier in the year. The next one that I'd like to touch is the foundational engineering. I think back, if I'd like to relate this back to one of the vision statements and comments from the keynote this morning, I think Tableau themselves are trying to get a number of things right from an engineering perspective, right? The focus is on usability and adoption and simplicity. All those themes are actually extremely relevant, but it is also important to get them right. And I'll share how we got it right and the areas that we invest more time in, and then how it aligns with Tableau's own product roadmap, and then how it actually fosters that kind of innovation. Okay, let's get into that. This is on everyone's mind whenever we introduce a technology, right? Okay, we need self-service. Okay, define self-service. Okay, let's understand that. High availability, it needs to be always reliable. Self-service is not good enough. It needs to be reliable and highly available. We need to be able to support large concurrency because we are unable to predict what the growth is, but whoever is using it should be able to have a good end user experience. It needs to be available globally because we are a global organization. We need to be able to address the system lifecycle management pragmatically rather than having to go through the traditional mechanism of a ticket-driven change management process. Doesn't mean that we are not doing that. We still do that. I will explain how we deal with that. We need to explore new functionality. Tableau releases Tableau 10.1 beta. Well, we need to create a mechanism to actually make that happen. Deal with audit and compliance. Obviously, we're not just doing this for fun and then publishing on the internet, right? You're here to serve a business purpose. We need to be able to understand what's going on in the environment, who's doing what, where, and when, right? That's also important. periodic upgrades just to align with the support lifecycle, mobile enablement. Mobile is no longer a differentiator, it's just a delivery mechanism. How do you actually enable that? And last but not the least, how do we make all of this agile? Right? Let's see how we are doing it. So what this is a pyramid style layout in terms of how we are going about it. Let me walk you through. We have beta boxes, we have sandbox, we have a concept of sandboxes for everyone. We have a two-tier environment, which is a slight deviation from a classic software development lifecycle, which is basically non-prod and prod, that's it. There's no QA, no test. You can actually define and design your own content authoring, publishing, and review cycle using the two environments, and you can do that. And last but not the least, we have a three-tier environment, which is a classic dev, QA, and prod. If we need it, or if you need it, we have an environment for that. Don't mistake these environments equal to one server. These are not. They are redundant, high available clusters of environments which are serving a large user base to deliver all the abilities, concurrency, scalability, and all of that. We have done that. So we are not sharing what our server configuration is, what the hardware footprint, all of that is, because that's irrelevant. It's important to actually understand how we're doing it. So beta boxes, Tableau announces a beta environment. We create a beta environment, and it's on. It's voluntary. It's not a mechanism that everybody needs to subscribe and participate, but we have a vested interest to make sure that we have a capability where we can understand what is being rolled out, right? And the best way to do that is to create a beta environment. And we recruit beta participants, just like Tableau recruits beta participants for themselves. So we recruit beta projects to explore the functionality, and the objective being that we want to refine the service offerings in the other environments as well, right? And the way to do that is get first-hand experience on that. We have a beta environment, and that tightly aligns with Tableau's beta schedule. If Tableau releases a beta schedule, beta calendar, if there is, doesn't matter how many number of beta cycles that they run, we will run parallel beta cycles within Pfizer. The next one is, and by the way, there's a transient. So if the beta cycle completes, and 1 or 2 weeks after Tableau's beta cycle completes, we close out our beta cycle as well. So those environments actually get destroyed. So that's why they're transient. All of the environments are permanent. The concept of sandboxes for everyone is that I talked about the global capability, right? Visual Analytics Cloud. We are calling it Visual Analytics Cloud because within the Pfizer, these are almost synonymous to Tableau Online for all the Pfizer colleagues. And if we treat sites as the unit of governance, which is similar to what Tableau Online or the cloud-based capabilities would look like, that is what end users would experience. And the way we are doing that is there's a concept of sandbox. If you are a colleague and you have a project, you don't necessarily know whether or not Tableau is the right fit, or you also are not sure what your rollout schedule is going to be, what your expected uptake would be in terms of the total number of users, the number of development hours that you will end up spending, and whether or not this is the right solution for you. Sandbox is the first entry point. You can actually come, do your project in the sandbox, roll it out, and then go through the process of figuring out whether or not this is something that you want to take forward in terms of going and then getting additional investment dollars, licenses, or even capacity expansion, right? Sometimes if you want to roll out a particular dashboard capability for, let's say, for example, 5,000 users, obviously there is some capacity aspect to that in terms of whether or not the current environment can support. All of that learning is something that we are encouraging in the sandboxes for everyone. Like I said, these are sandboxes for everyone. Every colleague at Pfizer is allowed, or basically they have access to this, and there's no questions asked, because the idea is to encourage experimentation. The idea is to actually help them refine their own hypothesis, right? And after that, assuming that you're successful, and this is the route you want to go down, then you now have a highly reliable and available production environments. These are two-tier environments. There's a non-prod and there's a prod, and these are global capabilities. There's a multi-server, highly available cluster, high availability configuration that is deployed in all the regions. And there's one per region, one in Americas, EMEA, and then Asia Pac. And that's where the projects will go. And the purpose is on the right side, purpose is explained on the right side. Right? The beta boxes to explore new capabilities. Sandboxes for everyone is to allow experimentation with your own data. And two-tier environments are basically visual exploration. So you want to do this at scale to serve your business users, that's what you would do. And last but not the least, I mentioned the previous environments are only two-tier, non-prod and prod. Right? Depending on how you come up with your own content, authoring, review, and publish cycle, you can still accomplish that in a two-tier environment. However, if you have a strictly mandated process that you need to follow with either a validation process or a GXP process or a GMP process, for compliance reasons, to actually maintain replicas of environments in terms of configuration and performance characteristics and all of that, we do have an environment for that as well. But obviously, those are environments that are not necessarily the first choice for all solutions. If your solution doesn't need these kind of controls, you don't necessarily need to use that. So majority of the solutions actually end up in the two-tier environments, but based on your actual criteria, you may end up using the three-tier environments if your business need demands that. Right? So that is our way of how we deal with the systems engineering to answer all the, or to solve all the challenges that I talked about, including everything from self-service access to, last but not the least, agility. How do we build agility? This is how we are building agility. Right? And we feel that whatever we have accomplished is serving us reasonably well, but that's not the end of the journey, right? Then there are still a number of areas that we're looking forward to, working with Tableau, also trying to mature our own internal processes and approaches, and I've actually listed them out in three separate categories, right? If we were to promote more and more self-service, what are the things that we would want to do more and more of? It doesn't mean that we're not doing any of this. We are doing most of them, but we want to do more of these, right? Pragmatic governance and foundation services. For promoting more and more of self-service, we are putting a lot of emphasis on rolling out solution design templates and review templates, because there's a lot of public collateral that is available outside, not just from Tableau, but some of Tableau's trusted partners, and also some of internal expertise as well. We're boiling them down to set of reusable design templates or review templates. If you want to review an existing solution against a certain criteria, how would you go about doing that, right? We feel that creating them and then publishing them and making them broadly available to users would actually help promote more and more self-service. Best practice guidance, there's always some best practice guidance tips and techniques that you can learn. We're creating more and more of those, providing links to public sources or internal sources as well. Self-serve metrics for everyone. I think in one of the keynotes they touched on metrics, right? We want to make the metrics broadly accessible to everyone. You as an end user, you should be able to understand all the relevant statistics about your own visualization. How is it performing? Who has used it? Any audit criteria? Everything that you set. You don't need to open a ticket or go talk to somebody to understand the metrics. You should be able to do that. And there's an emphasis. We feel that if we continue to expand our work in these areas, it can actually help increase self-service. Next one is the pragmatic governance. Obviously, I touched upon the sponsorship slide, but I only talked about what is the unit of governance for us. Unit of governance for us is a site. But technology as a whole is not necessarily the site, right? There are servers, there is hardware, there are licenses, and there's some training dollars and all of that. How do we actually refine our own existing total cost of ownership and then refine these models for to be able to sustain this over a period of time? Integrations with advanced analytics ecosystem, just like, I think this is, we didn't know what they were going to share in the vision, but I think, I guess this shows how a large implementation would want to solve for some futuristic things as well, right? Some of the things that Abe touched on were advanced analytics capabilities in terms of integration with R, integration with some of the additional other platforms where we do work and then also bring it back and integrate with Tableau. We also have pretty sophisticated advanced analytics technology stacks, and the emphasis is to integrate Tableau more and more with the other capabilities that we're investing in parallel. Product innovation, tightly aligned with Tableau's product development life cycles. Beta is one way for us to do that, but there are also additional opportunities that we are always open to, which I'll touch on in the next one, specific ones. And foundation enhancements, right? Mobile enablement. Our mobile journey started way back, even before we ramped up Tableau, right? Tableau journey is only 10,000 plus in the last three and a half years. But Pfizer has been doing mobile business intelligence for much longer than that, in tools not necessarily using Tableau. But trying to do visual analytics in mobile is a different challenge altogether in terms of the amount of data sets that you're dealing with and the type of interactivity that you want to build on a mobile device, and what is the right kind of app delivery mechanism, whether it should be a native app or a HTML5 app, or whether or not the desktop experience will translate seamlessly into a mobile experience. These are real challenges. We feel that we have pretty good understanding of that, having done large-scale mobile deployment at Pfizer, and we're looking forward to implement that in Tableau as well. The other two, monitoring and automation. When I mentioned about product innovation, right? The key challenge in being able to be agile in technology delivery is how closely are we aligned to the most recent capabilities and innovations that the product vendor is rolling out, right? In this case, Tableau. But when you have 10,000 users and you have thousands of workbooks already in the environment, right? How do you actually make the effort of moving from 9.x to 10.x easy, right? So one particular version to the other version. That by itself calls for some amount of regression testing, some amount of scalability testing, and some basic due diligence. Even if you don't do extensive regression testing, you have to do some level of testing. And you want to insulate users from doing that. And the way we would want to continue to partner with Tableau is in those areas around monitoring of the entire environment. In Tab 1, they have open source projects and utilities to actually help monitor the overall health and stability of the Tableau environment using Tab 1. But they also have something called Tab Jolt. It actually is also another open source project. We have implemented that. I think going forward, we would like to scale that and then expand it much more broadly, so that when we have to take on initiatives like moving from 9.3.6 or 9.3.x to 10.1, it's a significant jump from a major release, right? 9 to 10, so that's a significant jump. The dot releases are not that risky from a technology risk perspective, but from major releases are very risky. If there are automated mechanisms in the name of self-service to help the individual business teams or vertical teams do their own regression testing using automated utilities to get some sense of whether or not this would continue to perform the way it is, or the response times would be acceptable, you would need to invest in automation. We are investing in automation. Tableau themselves are investing in automation. We'd like to actually continue to work in that area. And last but not the least, system performance management. End of the day, end user experience is absolutely critical. There are utilities and mechanisms that Tableau themselves are working on. We feel that this is an area for joint collaboration, continue to work with Tableau, and then roll out any utilities, self-serve utilities. Performance recording is the lowest common denominator. That's just one example, but there are more of them that Tableau themselves are rolling out, and we want to roll them out as well. And this is the last slide. So we touched upon, we moved from 2013 to today, we are 10,000 plus, and the services that are end user focused that have been rolled out, right? And we've been reasonably successful, I would say. Reasonably is a modest statement. I think we feel that we accomplished a lot, and then we are We've set the example for vertical services as well, in addition to horizontal services. But if I were to summarize the entire talk into 4 key points, right? We feel that if you can get these 4 areas, or focus on these 4 areas and focus on these 4 things, when you are trying to build a community, if you don't build a community, obviously you'll have lots and lots of challenges, right? In technology adoption. That's absolutely critical, right? Governance. This needs to be pragmatic. There are so many things that you can govern when it comes to technology, but keep it pragmatic. We have chosen this site to be a unit of governance, and then we've been very successful. It could be something else for you, but you need to get that right. Foundational services. There is no secret sauce. To be agile, you need to figure out how would your own systems engineering process need to be, and how should they evolve from what you're already doing for existing technologies, and bring in that agility. We have adopted that pyramid approach where beta boxes all the way to validated environments, and there's a method of madness there. And that's what actually gives us the agility, so that we can always get access to the latest and greatest features that Tableau has rolled out, to ensuring that whatever we are running in production is absolutely stable and reliable, right? But to do that, systems engineering needs to be rethought or engineered well with agility in mind. And last but not the least, visual analytics services. You built a community, you have pragmatic governance, the engineering itself is agile to provide very enriching and exciting or a fun user experience. But if we do not invest in building some of the visual analytics services, you will not see that adoption grow, right? Visual analytics services by themselves cannot solve all visual analytics challenges or needs within the company. But what our framework and services that Abe has explained, you need to seed them and continue to build on them. It doesn't mean that they are the only ones, only way to actually consume visual analytics services. No, that's not the message. You need to invest in some level of visual analytics services. It's almost like a show and tell, and then expand and then make it accessible to the community at large, so that actually, again, the community will pick up and then they expand. Okay? With that, we'll wrap up the talk and then be happy to take any questions or comments.
Give us a little color on the structure and size of your lab and your envision organizations. I know you're. It's all good. I know that you guys are an enormous pharmaceutical company with probably, I don't know how many employees, but I'm curious as to how that structure is set up, how many people that you have in that, and how all that works.
I can answer that.
Sure. From the analytics lab perspective, again, as Sambath mentioned, this is not the only analytics organization within the company. But with the analytics lab, it's about 10 data scientists and growing. From Envision, somebody help me out here. A bunch of folks here. How many folks do we have? About the same?
And is,
Oh, you know what? I'm okay.
thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, I have a question regarding your comments early on regarding scale up and down the technical staff as business need change. Because it's just in my experience, it's very difficult to control the headcount in a large organization. So I'm just wondering how you achieve that.
Yeah, that's sort of a consulting firm that we use. It's one of our trusted partners. So they handle that. They handle that very well based on a forecast of projects that are coming into the pipeline from Envision. They kind of see and what the technical expertise requirements are. They handle that, which is why we partner very closely with them. And we talk with them on a daily basis, right? So we know what's coming in, what's almost done, where we're headed, and based on that, we're able to keep track of headcount and resources. It is tricky, but that's why we partner with someone for that.
Hi, I have lots of questions, so I hope you guys are open to some potential follow-up. But I would ask two now. I guess the first question would be, how do you, or what do you have in place to kind of make sure that sandboxes for everyone don't become, business solutions for all these departments that they're kind of shadow IT or whatever you want to call it? That would be one. And then I think for your side, I noticed when you were kind of showing the handoff between the lab and Envision, you had kind of data modeling as that center hook. Do you have rules in place that keep kind of the lab from doing a lot of throwaway work that would ultimately be done? How do you keep from doing a lot of throwaway modeling in the lab environment that can't be used by the Envision organization, or is that even a thing? I guess for you guys.
Sure.
Let me answer the first one. How do we not let sandboxes become the rogue development environments, right? So, first of all, it is transparent. So, at least from a governance perspective, there is a monthly review of how many sites we have in sandboxes, and there is an expectation up front that 90 to 120 day is the max window within which you would stay in a sandbox for any particular project. You can do more projects in a sandbox to understand and then refine your solution, but generally speaking, you should have a good sense within the 90 days, at the most 120 days if there is a much more complex activity, like for example, if you are doing single sign-on integration and SAP integration, and then also integrating with a web UI and all of that. These are little bit complex problems, right? So 90 to 120 day is a reasonable window. We set that up front in the communication when a site is provisioned. That is an expectation that is always set. And we certainly make sure that we don't bump anybody out after that 90 to 120 day, but there is a natural attrition that happens. In the beginning, we were also concerned about these challenges, but what in reality what happens is from beta boxes are like 6 to 12 weeks. That's the max life cycle of a beta box. And then as soon as there is a GA available, then betas move into, or the GA moves into sandboxes. So at least 4 to 5 times a year, sandboxes are getting updated, right? So which means that if you are in that environment more than 90 to 120 days, you are actually being subjected to some disruption that you don't want, right? And you will automatically see natural attrition, because as we are moving the versions, you want the latest and the greatest, and then much more stable. And we have seen that the community governs itself. They like, okay, they move out. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So your second part of the question. So in that particular example, what we realize is someone has to own the solution. It can't be owned by both the analytics lab and Envision. So the analytics lab owned the proof of concept to see if what the business wants would work. Then we hand off the entire solutioning to Envision to do. So that initial code base, which is the prototype code base, is also handed off to them. And we work with them as they do the modeling and the end-to-end visualization of it. So we, of course, have the code base on our end. We understand what it is. But they will take that and then build on that with the other various scenarios. So we do our best not to lose code. But the analytics lab, a lot of our requests are one-off. I need something, and I need an answer in 3 days, 4 days. There are times when it's a 3-4 month prototype and a pilot, very intensive. But a lot of them are, we get a call on Friday, they need something for a strategic meeting on Monday. We need something, what can you guys give us that's directionally correct? So a lot of our code could end up being throwaway, but we try to keep a code repository where we kind of classify the different types of work we do.
So thank you guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Very useful presentation. I have a question related to, I think one of the first things you mentioned was the leadership buy-in. And there are a lot of questions asked generally when you go to the leadership and say, we need to make this investment. So they ask for return on investment and things like that, and which obviously you don't have in place because you're trying to get it rolling. So there's always this chicken and the egg problem. So how do you create the chicken or the egg first and then get these things rolling? So any insight on that?
Yeah. So excellent question. So that's why I backtracked the first slide to 2013 on this is how we were in 2013 and this is where we are today, right? The growth from 10 to 10,000 did not happen overnight, right? So there was an initial seed investment that was made as part of a particular business initiative or one of the business sponsors as, okay, these are a couple of innovative technologies that we want to deep dive into and then build some pilot solutions, and then it's the end product which is the solution that actually drives further investment. We have taken an organic growth approach rather than a big bang, build a big business case, ask for some X amount of dollars, and then keep justifying the benefits which you haven't shown or delivered yet, right? So we build something which actually works, which is able to successfully deliver what it needs to, and then the demand actually kept producing more funding, and then we keep expanding organically, right? So the 3-year window is actually, the growth within the last 3-4 months has been phenomenal, but reaching 8,000 itself was a significant milestone, and that growth was organic. We did not build a business case for 8,000 on day one. We built a business case for 2 servers in one region, right, in 2014, and then I can't tell you how many servers we are running totally. You can imagine it's a global footprint. If it is serving these many users in each of the regions, it's a pretty substantial footprint, but we reached there through organic growth. And in one of the, I think, road ahead, I said governance and investment cost models are actually an opportunity, joint opportunity, both not just internally within Pfizer, but also something to work with Tableau themselves, because there's a desktop component and there's a server component as well. You know, how do you actually solve that at this scale? I don't think we have solved it, but we have grown organically. So a couple.
This has been a hello. Test. This has been a great presentation, and I mean, from what I see, this has been like a foundational move for Pfizer as far as visualization and investment in Tableau itself. I mean, we're kind of in the same environment ourselves in our organization, but what I'd like to know is you've supplanted other dashboarding and other means of viewing things, and those were in place before. How did you fight that battle, especially with this big investment in this, and to actually encourage people to move over and to continue to move over?
So, very good question. We are not fighting it because Tableau is not enterprise BI. I think let's just be honest to ourselves, right? Tableau is not enterprise BI as much as they would want it to be or something else. It is not an enterprise BI platform. You cannot produce a report in the night and burst it to 10,000 users and produce a pixel perfect quality like some of the other tools can do, right? The strength is in visual analytics, so that as per your thought process, you can follow and visualize and understand and answer the problem that you're trying to answer, or you start with a starting point, or you establish a starting point and then help drive through a chain of thought, right? That is what we are trying to solve for through visual analytics, rather than trying to build a capability to replace existing enterprise B environments. I think they both have their own strengths and challenges. So does Tableau, right? We're not trying to pitch against each other. Obviously, a user from existing enterprise BI would want to recreate something in Tableau, and we have seen that as well. If you're trying to analyze 400,000 data points and expect a sub-second response time, that's not going to happen, right? If it didn't happen in something else, it's not going to happen here as well. So these are hard realities. Sometimes users learn themselves when they venture out into this. We don't intentionally fight it. There is a very simple guidance matrix that we publish, just like Abe has shared. This is what Lab solves for. This is what Envision solves for. Here are the services that are vertical services. But at the same time, from a solution guidance, right, here is a high-level solution guidance. If you need to do these 10 things, here are your preferred choices. Right? Sometimes you can educate and you'll be a lot more successful rather than trying to mandate and then try to police it the other way.
In the pharma highly regulated environment, how do you maintain those best practices within within the self-service environment.
Absolutely. So the last, the bottom foundation in the pyramid, can you go back to that slide? This one is a validated environment. If you have to build solutions, you need to go through training, and there is expectation about a learning curriculum that you have actually completed before you get access to these. But if you're not doing these validated solutions, then this is your playground, right? Yeah. So yeah, the process controls exist for that reason, for a particular environment, not for all of them.
One last question.
Yep.
If you were to look back 3 years, 2013, and tell us, one or two things that you would have done that would have expedited what you did, what would those be?
So can you fast forward?
Go up.
Fast forward it to the road ahead. Yeah. The utilities around monitoring and automation are the ones that we would invest more time in if we were to do this again, right? Because success in these actually comes in leaps and bounds. When you're trying to build a visual analytics solution, you're trying to build a capability that actually helps you tell a story with the data, right? It is great. But if we were to do this again, we would actually start off with very robust automation capability for monitoring of performance, and also providing Tableau, which is a unit testing and a load testing framework, so that if you're venturing out into building a solution for maybe 5 users or 50 users or 5,000 users, the framework exists so that you build it and then you run it with certain criteria. That's what we would do it differently if we were to do it again.
So we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
Before that, can you guys give a big applause for the speakers?
Thank you.
Yeah, final question. So the Envision team, the 10 employees that you have in that team, can you give a little insight into the background of the roles, the kind of the job titles, background of those employees? Where did they come from? Are they more, BI? Are they more IT? Also, the relationship to the delivery partner that you mentioned. What role do they do? What does the internal team do?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So just curious.
All right. Thank you. I can
Sure. Well, yeah, so the roles are, we have Vic Kapoor here, who is right in the front. He's part of the team. He leads up our platform operations, and Vic is part of the team. Myself, from more of a solution engineering perspective. And the third colleague is more of a client-facing. So they're all within BT, but different aspects of the technology. And then within Envision, the remaining folks are primarily our trusted partners, right, who are the engineers on the ground who actually get the work done. So it is primarily within BT, but we have a foot in the client-facing role, which is really important. So that communication is always there. And we also have someone who's technology and tools and platform focused, who knows what's up and coming and the various tools available. And then from the solutioning perspective, from a data engineering perspective, that would be myself in that role. So it's just 3 colleagues at the moment.
And the skills, I think was the other part. What types of skills?
Yeah, there are 2 directors and myself, senior manager.
And they all have both traditional BI and also modern analytic technology skill sets, visual analytics, and the so-called open source Hadoop and all of that. This is a good breadth of technology coverage and understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.